All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the panel on academia and computational neuroscience. I'm grateful to, so I'm Carson Stringer. I'm a group leader at HHMI Janelia Research Campus in the US. And I'm grateful to be joined by Arini and Srini, who are going to introduce themselves and the kind of lab that they run and tell us about a little bit about their work, and then we'll jump into questions. So Arini, do you want to go first?
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Nice to meet you all. My name is Irina Orizaki. I'm professor in cognitive and computational neuroscience. My work is in the area of cognitive computation, and this is basically the lab I have. I started by researching attention using computational modeling techniques and behavior approaches, and expanded that to cross-cultural differences in cognitive processes and conditions like ADHD, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. This is my introduction. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Srini, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Thank you, Carson, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Srini. So I'm at IIT Madras. I'm a professor here in the Department of Biotechnology, and I head the computational neuroscience lab here. And we work on systems level models of brain function. My basic degree is in electrical engineering, so I tend to look at brain function in more engineering terms. So we worked on modeling the basal ganglia for a long time, for almost 10-15 years. And for the last 5-6 years, we got into hippocampus and spatial navigation. We hope to build these modules, different modules of brain, and put together kind of a whole brain model, a simplified whole brain model in another maybe 10 years. That's my introduction. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. I'll say a little bit about myself as well. So I'm a computational neuroscientist. I try to build models for understanding large-scale, high-dimensional data, both neural data and image analysis. And I've been running my group for 2 years now. Okay, so I think it'd be fun kind of for you to give a little background of maybe what you began your studies in and how that's helped you in your career. Rini, you want to go first?
So I have done quite a big jumps in my career. So please bear with me. I can tell you the whole story. It's actually long. So I did start on, my background is in mathematics. So I started on mathematical modeling, but not on neuroscience, but on underwater acoustics. And after a few years working on this area, I've decided that I need a field that I have unlimited area of exploring, basically. And I didn't feel I had that on underwater acoustics. And I was also fascinated with the brain and how it works, and I wanted to learn more on this area. So I kind of moved to the computational neuroscience by starting research on modeling the rabbit nictitating membrane response during classical conditioning. So my first modeling approach was a muscle model of the nictitating membrane during learning. And there, basically, through that, I was introduced to the area of to the psychology overall, and to neuroscience. But studies with animals, for me, I didn't feel I was getting what I wanted, because I wanted to have a more direct approach to see basically what effect my work can have in humans. So after my PhD, I joined the lab of Glyn Humphreys in University of Birmingham, where basically there I started research on attention, building computation model, the computation model that I'm working on, the thoughts on attention, and investigating basically and trying to understand conditions like visual neglect and how basically the changes in human brain that are done in a stroke, and how they're linked with my model, how my model could explain basically these changes. And this is basically my starting point. And then this area fascinated me so much that I stayed there. Finally, my journey in a way found a purpose and a state on that area and continue on that area by modeling attention, but not only attention, another process like decision making. And I'm still fascinated by what I find every day, and using computation modeling to explore how the brain works. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks. That's great. Srini, you want to say similar? Well, a different trajectory, but similar.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's somewhat similar because I began my journey as an electrical engineer. I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering here at IIT Madras. And then in my final year, somebody showed me an article on neural networks. This was way back in '89 because the field was just emerging at that time. I thought it's very interesting. And then I went for master's and PhD at the University of Texas at Austin, where I worked on neural networks with Professor Joydeep Ghosh. And I really liked the field, but at the end of my PhD, I felt that this is probably not how brain works. I'm just not probably faithful to the real brain. So then I said I need to learn some neuroscience. So for that, I did a postdoc in Baylor College of Medicine, which is a med school, with Professor Reed Montague. And he was a great inspiration for me. I mean, he was the one who kind of made me decide that this is a field I want to be, all my life. And because he was such a fireball of energy and ideas, and it's really great working with him. So then after that, I worked in oil industry in Houston for some time, but I didn't like industry that much. And so both negatively and positively, these two experiences made me choose academics. So then I joined IIT Madras. So began my journey and so started the effort with modeling the basal ganglia. One of the things I noticed very quickly in neuroscience is that for any system in the brain, you'll have like half a dozen perspectives and cams, and there's no coherence. Each person is saying something else, and so kind of unlike in engineering where you have fundamental axioms and everything is built on top of that, neuroscience things are kind of more diffuse. So I said it'll be nice to bring that kind of engineering flavor where there's a conceptual foundation, everything is built on top of that. We are not yet there yet, but I mean that's the kind of thing we would like to do in my lab. So hopefully these ideas can be embodied in a kind of a whole brain model before I retire. Okay? That's my long-term goal. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a struggle a lot of us have in the modeling field, is how far to get from the data. At a certain point, you always want to be making models that are testable with some data, whether or not you have access to it. But you never have enough data to fully constrain what you're doing. Cool. There's already some questions in the chat, so maybe we can start with what qualities does it take to do well or be happy in academia? I don't know who wants to take a stab at that.
I can be happy. So I think I will go back to the be happy later. But in terms of quality, I think resilience is and patience is one of the biggest qualities, and also the ability to dream and think big, think a little bit outside the box, and see basically past failures that might occur. Failures in terms of achievements, professional achievements, but also in basically being successful in modeling what you want to model. I don't know about being happy, because you're happy because you're enjoying what you're doing. It's actually it's one of the small number of professions that what we are doing is actually our. We need to accept the vast amount of things that are out there that you don't know and you're exploring, and not feeling sad because of not finding that and not knowing this other area that you don't know. So we always feel that we're missing something, while in reality what we are here for is to learn more things, and this is why we're here. So you can be happy when you accept that you don't really know anything and you are here to learn more.
That's a great answer. Srini, you have anything you want to add?
Sorry, what was the question again? I missed you. I'm very sorry.
What qualities to do well
Yeah.
in academia and or to be happy?
Okay, so like Arina said, you need a lot of patience and all that. But let me put it this way: I think there is an easy way to approach academia. There is a harder way. Easy way would be, I mean, you'll get all this traditional, inherited information and wisdom, like, you need to work with a big guy in the field, and then once you leave your postdoc, you need to keep in touch with your boss and kind of do intense networking, go to SFN every year. And, I mean, so these are the hot topics you want to work. So this is like a conventional wisdom, and for building a sort of a career. This, I think, is the easy way. The hard way is just listen to your heart, right? Wherever your heart takes you, just go boldly, right? Don't care about any of these calculations. Right? So point is that these are two extremes. So can you find a balance between these two? Because both are important, because we live in a world and there are certain rules of the game, rules by which the world runs. So can we find a balance for ourselves? But make sure that you have given enough place and given enough attention to your heart. So that's what will make you happy tomorrow as an academic. And of course, a good set of students, a very inspired, happy lot with whom you can interact all the time, because as an academic at some point, that will be your world. And you and a handful of students, and where you discuss things and chit chat, and all day in and day out, right? That will be your world. And also, so one thing I feel is very useful for young neuroscientists as a part of training is at the end of your PhD or postdoc, if you can have some kind of a big picture perspective of the field, which is very hard because the field is so vast and you'll be doing one little thing, right? And through reading popular science and things like that, maybe I'll get back to that, but that contact with great ideas will keep you happy. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks. That's very helpful. Yeah, I think many of us feel like there's things you need to do for your career, and there's just like pure research and understanding the concepts that we don't know and accepting we don't know these things. And I think you want to find that balance where you can do what you really care about, but also, I mean, you do have to write the publications and go to conferences and share your work, which is a big, I think I would say, one thing here, a really good quality of a scientist is being able to share your research and teach your research to other people, because that's our job as scientists. In academia, we often are professors in institutes where we have to teach students. And likewise, when we write papers, we're explaining our work to people. And it's really important to do a good job, especially if you're on the clinical side and like news outlets are picking your stories up and things like that. You want to make sure you're explaining your work to the public, and explaining your work to the field if you do want your work to be recognized. So I think that's an important quality that you're already working on at NeuroMatch by like explaining to each other the tutorials you're doing, and being like teachers in a sense too, for all the TAs as well. We can do the next question, if you two can see it. Kind of what do you think of people who are maybe later stage but thinking about doing a PhD? But maybe we can also say maybe in general what programs and people in general are looking for in PhD students.
So what background the students have is that will have, and what qualities they have? Is that what the question is asking, you think? Yeah. So,
well, it's also asking age-based, but I don't think any of us are really age-based when we're evaluating so much. So,
so I think the student needs to be prepared to work hard, to work all hours, but enjoy what they're doing. Background, they definitely need mathematical background, I believe. And I think resilience is again one thing that they need. I mean, in terms of qualities, But in terms of background, I would say mathematical engineer background, neuroscience is what is important. And the ability also to be able to be strategic in the decisions that they make, in terms of how they plan their reading before they start, how they take each step of the time, and how they understand how they need to allocate their time. I think this is a very big quality to have.
Yeah, I think I agree with
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, because you need to have a good foundation in mathematics. You can get it from physics or mathematics or through various engineering fields. Because I think engineering is a great way to make a side door entry into neuroscience. Because you'll learn to think in terms of systems. And in addition, I feel a very regular work habit. So that is like, I work 16 hours for 3 days and then sleep off for 1 week. I mean, that kind of a thing is, it won't work in PhD, because PhD and also in academic world, you need to be prepared for the long haul. And for years, you don't see anything happening, and can be quite tiring, quite frustrating. So you need to put in those hours every day. Just 8 hours is enough, but if you have to do it very regularly. Then another thing is, in PhD, you get caught up because there's so much pressure to publish these days. You have to do something, publish something, send something out, and become very mechanical. But I think it's nice to have some time to read books and think about what's happening out there, and always probe the fundamentals. But neuroscience, unfortunately, I think the fundamentals are somewhat fuzzy, right? Unlike in physics. So you need to constantly probe the fundamentals. Like Irina was saying, really, nobody knows anything. If you push comes to shove, you ask the fundamentals, right? Nobody knows. So maybe you will be the guy who will, or a girl who will crack those fundamental secrets. We still don't have those 10 laws of the brain, and we are far away from that. So I mean, take time out to read and think and discuss and brainstorm among yourselves. Don't hesitate to ask bold questions, difficult questions. Right? It might sound silly. In fact, if you just take up an original study of your Bible of neuroscience, Candle and Schwartz, and every half a page you will find a very deep research question. I mean, the chapter is not saying anything about it. It's just skimming through and just glossing over. Right? You take a critical look and you'll find a research question. So don't hesitate to make your own study and come to your own conclusions. But of course, you need to test them and prove them. I mean, nobody has any option there. So I think this combination of intellectual development and study work habits can make you, and that is a good preparation.
I think that's a great point. And knowing you're in a department too, where everyone is happy to ask questions and it's comfortable, and also you have colleagues that are excited to kind of explore the literature with you. I think that also makes it a more positive experience in general when you're learning about these different topics. There's a question about salaries. I think maybe we should answer. I don't know if people want to answer that online or offline. It's up to you two. I guess I can answer. In the US, it depends on the institute. I think like the postdoc salaries are all on the NIH website. You can find them. Professor salaries are all available if you teach at a public university. All the salaries are actually available online, so you can find the salaries for all the professors at the university. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. For industry, I think there's things like Glassdoor that you can look up to get salaries in industry in the US. Generally speaking, industry salaries will be higher than both postdoc and professorial salaries if you're in the computational field. If you're non-computational, then it might take more time to build up past the professorial salary in the US, at least. I don't know if you two want to give perspectives from your respective places.
So I agree. I mean, for UK that I'm based, it's similar as you described. There is most of the universities are under the national university pay scale, which basically all the salaries are published and they're the same. Some universities are excluded from that, but then again, the salaries are available to be seen. The professorial salaries, you can only see the starting point and the final point, like the range of salaries that professors have, but you don't always see the scales necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, same story here in India. I'm with a public university, so all the salaries are pretty much fixed. But one thing I can tell you is, so there is this emerging field of neurotechnology that you all must have heard about it. Now, if you can do consultancy or you can do projects for neurotech companies, and that can enhance your your cash flow. And in India now, it's a big thing to start startups. A lot of academics are getting into starting startups. I know colleagues who have each person has like 9 startups and things like that. So all that can because then salary can become only as kind of a fraction of what your income is. So if you're interested in that, I mean, these are all possibilities. Also, now the difference between computational neuroscience and AI is becoming quite thin, right? It's there's a continuum. It's becoming a continuum. So there's a lot of people looking for more inspiration from comp neuro. People from AI camp looking for inspiration from comp neuro. And if you have anything to offer, they're useful. Again, you can connect with the AI industry, and that can also improve your cash situation. So if you want to do that, do that. I mean, there is. So the thing is, it's not that bad. And your regular salary itself will be quite good. I think when I joined this position in India way back 20 years ago, it was pretty bad. But over a period of time, things have improved, and things are quite comfortable now. So that's all.
That's great. Yeah. I will add one quick thing to that. That generally in industry, your salaries are always going to be much start higher, and it'll be easier to get a job if you have a PhD. Because otherwise, if you're in software, you'll often be you'll be just a programming more than doing research. But if you have a PhD, you can get these research positions in industry as well, which maybe they're more structured than a postdoc, but they're maybe a little bit more research oriented. Okay. Is there anything maybe that you wish you knew starting out? Like any other advice maybe you want to give about getting letters of recommendation or thesis writing, applying for jobs, things like that?
I'm sorry. Sorry, technical thing came in, so I had to ask quickly. I'm sorry about this. I wish I knew. I wish I knew when I started. I am sorry. I wish I. So I was very dreamy, you have to say. I enjoyed my hobby so much that the only thing I was seeing is research and how I can learn more. But down the line, I realized I should be more actively keeping touch with people I met in conferences, keeping notes of who I met with, what I discussed, something that it's not in my character necessarily, and it's not something that I would be doing naturally. So in your lifetime as a scientist, as a researcher, you meet big number of people that you get along very well in a conference, but then you don't see again until after many years. It's a good idea if you try to keep touch with those people in terms for your personal development, but also for your personal development as a person, because that will be also a person, somebody that can share similar experience with you, and you can understand in times of difficulty, you can discuss the experience that you're living. And this can be a person that has an idea or has a position for you in the future when you want to move to different area or to different country and so on. So try to keep notes and try to keep in touch with people that you meet.
Yeah, I think I've had a very similar experience. So after I joined this job in 2020, the first 10 years I hardly networked, and so I hardly connected back with my colleagues in US. So I've been working independently, and then I realized when you send the papers out, so they keep coming back too often. sometimes you wonder whether the number of papers that come back is more than the number of papers you have sent out. Like, so that's because I don't know anybody in the basal ganglia community, and people think, who the hell is this guy? I mean, what is this paper? And just reject it. But thing is, it paid off well because I think because I did not connect with the big camps in basal ganglia, we were able to go off in a different direction, go off at a tangent and do something new. So that was a risk. It was not a calculated risk. It was totally ignorant, naive risk. I think it worked out well. I mean, good that I didn't connect with people too much. But now these days, where there's intense networking at every step of life, not just academics, that will be a handicap. So in fact, very recently, when my daughter was visiting us from US, she said, "Daddy, how come you don't even know about LinkedIn? I mean, why don't you use LinkedIn better?" And so I started using LinkedIn more intensely, more actively, and so that is working out. But I think one has to network. But again, like I said, I mean, it's very important not to lose track of what is your own voice in the whole thing. Right? A is saying this and B is saying this, and yes, all this is out on the social media and all that. But what is your voice? What do you want to say? What do you feel about it? I mean, we should never forget that, I think, as academics. Otherwise, you'll have nothing unique to say. You'll just be chiming what others are saying.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and places like Twitter, you can network with a lot of people. And I think back to Irini's point too, like if you meet people, you want to network with people that you enjoy meeting with as well, and like keep up with them. And it's a part of the job. I think networking is important in industry as well. But you want to make it fun and interact with people who are going to give you ideas to help you with your research and kind of or maybe a little adjacent to you to give you new ideas to think about. And those are kind of the most fun interactions. Personally, I have is where someone's slightly outside of my field and gives me new ideas and different perspectives of the way I was thinking about things. There's a question about how to approach professors when you're kind of at the pre-PhD stage. I don't know if anyone wants to chime in on that. I mean, you don't have to. I will say in the US, like you don't have to email professors. It's something that some people do, but you can apply to the programs. And I mean, when I evaluate candidates, I get candidates both from my emails and from the applications. So yeah, I don't know if other people have how it works in other countries. Yeah,
it is similar in a way. The only difference, if you approach professors before the application stage, sometimes the professors might get a better idea of the experience and the expertise that the applicant has than what they get from the application and the actual interview. So, I mean, it might be to your benefit to approach professor in advance, but it's not that I wouldn't basically attend to both the application and people that have approached me before. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you share something that's distinct from your application in the email in particular, then it's extra information for evaluation that can be useful. Yeah, sorry, Srini, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's very similar in India too, because I mean, student can write to the professor and explaining, their background and how it fits with the labs, activities, and all that. But ultimately, the decision is made by a committee, and based on the students, marks and all the ranks in the entrance exam and all that. So there's not much that the professor can do, right? But only thing is, if there's a good match between the student's background and this thing, and if the professor is aware of that, that might help a little bit. I don't know, 10%. It might tilt the decision a little bit. But there are so many other factors that go into the decision ultimately.
Cool, thanks. There's maybe one more upvoted question we should get to is kind of how to assess at the end of your PhD whether an academic career is good, like is a strong publication a must, for example?
Well, people that haven't completed the PhD, haven't completed a lot of publications at the end of the PhD, do not necessarily not follow a good career afterwards. So I don't think there is a way to judge other than being interested in that field so much, basically. So you can be, again, going back to resilient enough to continue and to enjoy what you're doing. And I think when you enjoy what you're doing, then you're going to be successful in the next steps.
Oh, hey, Thomas.
Yeah, hi, Thomas.
Thanks for
Thomas.
joining us. Oh no.
You're
Hey,
muted.
yeah, now you're back. Sorry. Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody? Say who you are and what you work on and how long you've had your group. I think you're muted.
Yeah.
I think you need to check your audio settings. I think, okay. Oh, almost. Great. We can see you now.
Yeah.
Oh no. Almost.
Okay. Let's see if this is any better. All right.
Do you wanna introduce yourself?
Yes, please. I was saying I've been listening to the conversation so far. Just technical challenges prevented me from joining in. So yes, myself, I'm Thomas Tago. I neuroscientist out of the University of Ghana. And unlike my colleagues here, I started from the biology side and just have been running with it, not necessarily coming from the engineering angle. So I would just as I know you are about to do the last questions, I'll just add some minor thoughts on the previous things that have been touched on, which is to say,
Please.
The idea of following your heart is very true. So you just need to do that and then be satisfied with the consequences. It really is a very emergent field where a lot of convergences being created. So it's very easy to think up ideas and things that you should be happy to just follow them up and pursue it. And as has been said, you never know the guy or the girl in the room who will make the next key discovery within the field that will take it to the next level. So I'm just gonna pause there and then just contribute as we go ahead.
That's great. Thanks. Do you mind muting yourself? Because I think there's an echo when you're not talking. Thanks. Great. So I think there's been a few questions in the chat about kind of the intersection of neuro and AI, and maybe also just in general, kind of what you would recommend to students after NeuroMatch to continue kind of their computational career, in a sense, if people have suggestions.
Can I?
Yeah.
So I think taking a course on ML or deep learning would be a great idea. In fact, if you're coming from more engineering sciences, and if you want to get into neuroscience and just try out things, it's a great idea to take a course on AI or ML, and then make a side door entry into neuroscience. Because using that kind of a conceptual framework, I think it's a lot more comfortable to understand how brain works, right? Than coming from like classical biology, which is makes it much harder to understand.
Maybe Thomas has suggestions coming from biology.
Yeah, so I would say have a conversation with a course mate or someone in your university who is actually studying the biological sciences, and as you've been studying whether it's mathematical or engineering sciences, ask someone who's actually studying biology, because then in just a conversation with them you may just get a sense of the awesomeness of what we appreciate the brain to be and the potential that we are all trying to understand. And if you just get an inkling of that from the sort of training you've received, the ideas will naturally flourish. Your only problem will be how can you explore the idea. But from your training, the sort of training that you've all received, whether it's engineering or mathematical science, I believe if you just get an inkling of the potential of the nervous system and the brain, the ideas will flood in.
Yeah, I agree. But also, I think what I will say is make sure that you like the route that you're choosing to go. This is that you will support it. It is part of what you would like to do, basically. Because if you don't like it, then no matter how useful it is, you cannot be successful. I mean, you can, but it will be harder.
Yeah, I agree. I think Thomas's point is great. If you can connect with people like who have data that they can't explain, that's a wonderful place to be as a computational person. And it for me, it's the most exciting thing because it's really we're at the frontier of the unknown. Great. Let's see if there are any other burning questions. Yeah, there's more questions about kind of what to do next. I guess we've suggested kind of to do more ML stuff. There's the deep learning course you can do at NMA as well. That might be useful. And there's other online courses. And I guess as you all are doing this NMA experience, I think what happens at in a lot of departments is people like create reading groups, kind of like, or imagine you could do a week. People at my institute, for instance, have done linear algebra week by week from the Gilbert Strang lectures and from MIT. And so those are, you can kind of create groups to gain a better understanding. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else want to add anything else? I guess, Thomas, we did have other questions too about like what you wished you knew when you started out. I think that's a good one if you want to share your perspective too.
Yeah, so that's great. I believe the trend was, knowing to do networking a bit more, and that's also true here. But I would say additionally, I wish I had known earlier to do two things. One, write down my ideas, the research ideas that you have, as crazy as it may be, whatever, just write it down and keep it somewhere for later reference. But more importantly, to allow yourself to focus on an idea, on one. And it can be something that may sound so simple, but some of the greatest researchers, you'd realize that they've built up on one idea over a long span of time. It wasn't a groundbreaking at its inception, but it slowly built up and it continued. So I would say allow yourself to pick up something, no matter how simple it may sound, and just commit to that and build up. And eventually, it will open up other pathways, and the research will direct itself, essentially.
That's a great point. I think there's a good question to address here with publishing anxiety. So like I love my research and I love explaining it, but the thought of dealing with all the documents and the people has been a roadblock. I'm wondering if people have ideas. Like I think that's a big question. At what point do you stop a project and decide to write it up? I think these are really hard questions. I don't know if anyone has perspective on these things too.
May I come in? So I think I echo. I don't know why, but I write as I go, and therefore I have the ability to see at which point it's ready to be submitted for publication and how many how many studies basically can be submitted for publication together. So in a way, this way, the anxiety of writing for publication is a little bit reduced because you are just writing your findings, what you're doing, basically. So the plans, you start by the literature review, the methodology, and so on. You go on, and then the last bit that you need to do to group everything together, it's not so big to be affected so much from the anxiety. So I would say take it one step at a time and try to be strategic on that. And therefore, the anxiety is not so strong.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great point. Thomas, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think I may be about to make your anxiety a little bit worse, in the sense that think about, well, what is going to happen if you don't publish it, right? It's fair enough you want to think about the good parts about the importance of publishing and sharing your work, but on the flip side, what happens if you don't publish your work? If you're doing your master's and you want to go to your PhD, not publishing any of your masters has now already counted a bit as it's counted a little bit against you, because then you have many master students who have published, which puts them in a better footing. If you're doing your PhD and you then want to go get a position within an institution and you haven't published, well, you've already lost something. So if the desire to share your findings is not enough of a motivation to get you over that hurdle, then maybe thinking about the negative consequences of what will happen if you don't publish. And if that doesn't get you over the hurdle, then yeah, not much more can be said.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think you know as well, like you can get a better sense too if you give talks as well, like within your department or at conferences, you can see the reception and you're like, okay, and that gives you a place to condense your ideas as well, in addition to writing things as you go. And so you can get a sense of how the paper works, and then you can start doing the writing and making the figures yeah, it's tough, especially your first time. And I think that's where your mentor comes in, and choosing a mentor that's willing to help you go through all this with you is really important. Like my mentor shared a book with me that was really helpful, this style book on scientific writing that really helped me to actually know how to write in the scientific world, because it's not the same as what you learn in high school.
Is it skunk and white? Is it skunk? Is it
Sorry?
skunk and white? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
It's a popular.
Do you have anything you want to add, Srini, about
Yeah, actually,
publication?
I think you guys have covered all the main points. I just want to say something that I've kind of written down about how to choose a topic for your PhD, because this is a interesting anecdote that is described in Sebastian Seung's book called Connectome. Right, you might have seen this. So he talks about somebody else, who had a similar question: how do you choose a topic which will get me a great PhD or a great career? And his mentor told him that you develop a new experimental method, because then everybody will use that method and they'll cite your paper, and you get a lot of citations. So point is, it's a great strategy, but the thing is, we don't do PhD, we don't do research to improve citations. How to maximize citations cannot be the objective of research. That is, I think, kind of certainly hijacking the whole process, right? So thinking again, like I said, what is a question that excites you? Like, what Thomas was saying, right? To stay with the idea, it looks very simple, but can be very difficult. It might take 30 years to work it out. But you break up the problem into small pieces and do one piece in your PhD, and I think that can make you very happy. Like I was, when I was in UT Austin, there was this Professor Prigogine, who was a Nobel laureate in chemistry. And he had only one question throughout his career, like, how do you reconcile classical mechanics with thermodynamics? In classical mechanics, there's no arrow of time. In thermodynamics, suddenly you have an arrow of time. Where does it come from? So I used to give these popular lectures to everyone, and so you see how that idea, that problem evolves in his career for over, I don't know, 30 years or even longer. So which is very inspiring. So I think that makes life as an academic very meaningful, right? Whether you have citations or not, I mean, that's a different matter. But so this is just another side to it. I just want to mention. That's all.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think so. We have one big upvoted question, which is related to this networking topic too, is like how to kind of get a mentor or someone to support your research other than your PI. I don't know if anyone has advice for that.
I think simple way is just knock on a few doors in your department, talk to people. If they ask you to buzz up, that is fine. Go to the next person. Thing is, you'll have an idea of who is what and who is doing what and who is what kind of person and are they approachable and things like that. Because I get students like that from other labs who just want to come and talk about their work and talk about other things also. So I think we brainstorm sometimes. We get interesting ideas. So I think it's not difficult. Just have to step out of your lab and knock on a few doors, and it will happen. It's very important to have a mentor who is very supportive and right who you can resonate with. It can have a very good influence. But it's possible.
Great, thanks. Yeah. So, oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
So you can. I mean, if you want to explore ideas of outside your institute, then again you go back to people that you meet in conferences or online. But in conferences, you have a better feel of the personality of the person, and if you can actually, if it is ideal to be your mentor, and then slowly you can start with questions. With contact the person and get to know the person, and then you reach the point that you ask them to be your mentor or discuss with the person your ideas or your plans for the future and so on.
Great, thanks. So we have 10 minutes left now, so we can maybe we can go around and have everyone kind of give final words of wisdom, maybe about the future of academia as well, if people have perspectives on where the field is going, and advice for job hunting in general. Yeah. Irina, you want to start?
Do you mind? Because I need to go earlier.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Please.
So thank you. I in terms of the future of academia, I think if we follow, it's up to us. If we are happy to continue basically working on this, on developing our research, continue learning, or if we want to proceed in this citation basically field where basically we are judged by how much our research is liked and not how much our research is actually contributing and how much we are learning. We might not have offer a big step in research development, but that small step that we are offering might be a significant step for continuing the research in the area. So therefore, the research of academia actually depends on us and the role that we choose to take. I don't think I can predict where it's going to go because it's up to us and how we develop it. So thank you so much for the invite. I really enjoyed our chat, and nice to meet all of you out there.
Nice meeting you. We'll keep in touch.
Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Srini, do you want to answer the question next?
Yeah, I'll just to add to what Irina said. So the thing is, these days, like I said, the whole research activity has become so mechanized. Everything is quantified in every little step. So if you want to judge a piece of work, I mean, we got a faculty resume, that resume faculty candidate. It's very simple. You just see where the person has published. Is it Neuron? Is it Journal of Neuroscience? Is it, I mean, what's the impact factor? And you just add up, you make a spreadsheet, you add up things, and then voila, you have an answer. I mean, I think that's a real cop-out. I mean, nobody is reading papers anymore. And it takes time to really judge a person's intelligence and his originality and creativity. We have made it into like a little spreadsheet thing, which anybody who can add up, work a spreadsheet can finish the whole thing in 5 minutes. Right? I mean, where are we going? And world over, it is like that. It's not just in one place or other. So, I mean, I feel very strongly about it. I think people should start reading papers, not just working spreadsheets. And it takes time. It takes nothing is easy. It takes time. Takes a lot of hard work. But to engage with the person at that level there's no other shortcut. I think students also should. I think should inculcate a tradition or a culture where you judge a piece of work without any socio-academic tags. I don't care where it is published. I don't care where it is from. I've read the paper and it is good work. I mean, are we confident of saying that? I think that we are moving away from that, and that puts the whole academic world makes it quite questionable. The second thing is I'm very passionate about popular science, and in fact, I do a lot of science. I want to talk to Thomas at some point about this because I write a lot of popular science in my mother tongue Telugu. Although I haven't done much last couple of years because the professional work is taking over. During my PhD, I've read a lot of books at UT Austin because it has an excellent library system, and that's one thing I really appreciate in the American academic setup. The libraries in the universities are just wonderful, right? I mean, it's just unbelievably good. And for example, the books of Antonio Damasio or V.S. Ramachandran, Scott Kelso's Dynamic Patterns, or Nancy Andreasen's books on neurochemistry and pharmacology, Rodolfo Linas, and Michio Kaku has written a book on brain, the future of the brain. I mean, I can send a list of titles later if students are interested. But I think these books will really shape you as a neuroscientist. So the thing is, you cannot perform every possible experiment because simply not practical, right? Right. But you can perform every possible experiment in your mind by just reading lots of stuff and discussing with others. So that can speed up your progress if you just, and also sharing ideas with the general public is a reward in itself. And it can be very motivating for yourself. Talking about this change, future of academia, I have a kind of a dream of what I want to be in future. Like, I want to sit on an island with a net connection, right, and work with many universities, many students, many companies, and whatever. But I want to sit on a beautiful island with in my own home with glass doors and things like that. So because after COVID, everybody is talking about gig economy. That is, you don't work for an organization, you do gigs for many organizations, but you are a freelancer yourself, right? I don't know if it is even possible in near future. I'm not seeing it happening, but my long-term dream is I would like to live like that at least by the time I retire. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Thomas. You want to add anything?
Yeah, I love that dream. I hope you can save me an island next to your island. That will be great. um, I in my perspective, from my view, what the future of academia looks like, um, I think it's really positive. It's positive in the sense that over the last few years, going to decade and so on, the conversation has been building up about breaking barriers between disciplines. So, a physiologist specializing as a neuroscientist, but what does that have to do with a computer scientist or even a sociologist, right? But then when you start looking at, for example, potential research topics around behavior, and it's a very clear connection, and it runs through from maths to anthropology to whatever. And we're seeing more and more of these barriers breaking. Some have happened naturally, and some you're having research funders almost trying to impose a breaking of these barriers, requiring you to, collaborate with someone in a different field before you can access the funds. So I can see more of this happening. And I have a senior colleague of mine who she says something that I find quite profound, which is that in the real world, problems don't have course codes, right? There isn't a course code that addresses reality when you come in. So we're seeing more of these barriers sort of being broken up, and I think it'll just keep on happening, and so on. So if you have interests that aren't directly related to your research field or your area of study, don't necessarily throw it out, right? In the very near future, it may become much easier to merge your personal interest with your career interest and hobbies and things. And yeah, it just becomes very fluid and comfortable working space. That feeling, we can all find an island as well. It'll be great.
Thanks. Those were both great answers. Yeah, I think interdisciplinary work is really exciting and important, and that's where like us with this like you're getting this computational expertise from NeuroMatch, and we can go in and solve new problems that people are working on that are at the edge of the field. And I think one advice I would say as a computational neuroscientist is I think where you publish exactly doesn't matter, but publishing in neuroscience journals in particular, rather than in machine learning journals, if you're interested in influencing the field, is going to be more useful, and it will help you. As Srini was saying, it's so important to deliver your research in a understandable way, and an 8-page NeurIPS paper might not be the way to do that. And so, yeah, if you want to be interdisciplinary and teach the field about what you know and what you're trying to understand, I think there's lots of great neuroscience journals to aim for. And this idea of like writing very short publications and having many of them is not something that's necessarily appreciated in the computational neuroscience field like it is in machine learning. I mean, you can do it either way. So it's kind of personal preference, but my preference is to be in this interdisciplinary space, working with biologists and kind of working at their timescale of publications, which I think is arguably a better timescale than the machine learning conference timescale, which is very fast turnover and harder to replicate results and things like that. Yeah, I think we're kind of wrapping up now. Is there any last words? I'd love. Yeah, now is the chance.
Actually, I have to go have another meeting to attend.
Okay, great. So then,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
Just to say, by having these conversations is always great, and not just with us, the panelists that are speaking to you, but even amongst yourselves as you're doing this course, because this cross-fertilization of ideas and thoughts, it does really help in the long run. So I just encourage you all to do more of this, and when you're also in a position to also